Today I'm visiting the beautiful country of Greece. And once again I'm visiting the beautiful Greek islands of the Aegean Sea. In this particular video we're going to visit the island of Kastellorizo, the most remote of the Greek islands in the southeastern corner of the Aegean Sea. We're going to walk for an hour and a half from the main town of Kastellorizo in order to visit the ancient site of Paleokastro, or the ancient castle or the old fort. We're going to examine the architecture of its walls. We're going to admire the beautiful views of the surrounding area. And we're going to learn quite a bit about its history. This is Vic. Let's go for a walk. Let's visit Paleokastro in Kastellorizo. Let's do it. And here is the view of Paleokastro from the bottom of the hill. It's built right on top of the very steep hill that you can see in the middle of the frame. What an incredible historic site this will be to visit. And finally here it is, Paleokastro, the old fort, the old castle here in Kastellorizo, built on a very steep hill, as you can see here. I've walked for another 45 minutes since the last clip. I walked around this very steep hill, past the airport, and then I climbed up for about 600 meters. Here's my very first view of this very historic area. In the far distance, right there, the historic island of Rho, R-H-O, or Rho and Omega in Greek letters. A very, very important island to the Greeks, the island of Rho, that is. I still have a long way to go, but let's enjoy our view from here and let's go make it to the top. Come on. As I'm approaching Paleokastro, and as I'm walking very carefully on this dirt road to go to the top, let's examine its history. A lot of books, unfortunately, will give you incorrect historic data regarding its construction. A book was saying it was built around 400 before Christ, and that's very incorrect. The fort that you see here is at least 1,000 years older than 400 before Christ. It was built by the Minoans, the civilization from Crete, and it was built around 1,500 before Christ. We're going to see evidence of that on the foundations of the wall, of the defensive walls. Then the ancient Greeks came around 1,100 before Christ. Then during Hellenistic times it was occupied by the descendants of Alexander the Great, then the Romans. The Byzantines were here for about 1,000 years, then the Ottomans, then the Venetians, the Ottomans again. In 1913, the island of Kastellorizo became independent for a few years, then the French, then the Italians, then the British and the Germans, and finally the Greeks in 1948. I may have forgotten a couple of peoples here or there, but it will give you an idea of the importance of this fort. Why so many different civilizations took it over and held it. It's a very, very historic place indeed. It has been in existence for well over 3,000 years. Now let's go to the top. Okay, I'm still outside Paleokastro, outside the defensive walls of the fort. I'm in the southwestern corner. And here we find a huge defensive tower. The churches we're going to see built inside the fort were built during the 17th and 18th centuries. But here we find these huge boulders built in order to construct this defensive tower. And this is a very good indication from the way the boulders are laid on the wall. They were placed during Minoan or Mycenaean times. That would date between 1500 and 1100 before Christ. Now, because of the size of the boulders, and they're really huge, these walls are labeled as Cyclopean, from Cyclops. It's a metaphoric sense, meaning huge boulders that only a Cyclops could lift. Okay, let's go inside Paleocastro. That's the outer wall that you see there. I just crossed that arch. I'm still in the southwestern corner. I'm going to go up a metal staircase here, and I'm going to go through this entrance here carefully. You need to really be careful where you step here. There are many reasons for that, and I will tell you in a second. Here's the church of Agios Nikolaos, Saint Nicholas. As I said, built 17 centuries after the birth of Christ. Well, as I'm walking inside Paleocastro, I find a cistern for storing water carved into a rock right here. Let's go a little closer. Right there. This would store about half a cubic meter of water. And above it we find another defensive tower. Now we can tell right away that's a ancient Greek tower from around the 4th century before Christ. Because of the way the boulders are carved, the shape and the way they are placed on top of each other. And on that peninsula far away in the distance is the town of Kastellorizo. And this is how far I have walked in order to get here. Now let's turn around, and here's Paleocastro from inside, and here medieval architecture mixes with the ancient Greek, Mycenaean, Venetian, Minoan architectures. Everybody has left a mark on this fort. Here are some medieval housing. Right by one of the main entrances of the fort. There are two churches here. The one on the left is the Church of the Virgin Mary. Right there. And this church up here is the Church of Saint Stephanos, Saint Stephen. And more medieval housing here. And in the 1850s, the locals created this beautiful mosaic here between the two churches. This was the central square of the fort. Now, by building the churches and the medieval housing and this beautiful mosaic here, the locals have modified the fort tremendously, and a lot of the ancient structures have disappeared. This building in front of us also is from medieval times. We can see the fireplaces. Let's go up the steps here carefully. You can find a well here. And this was the palace of the fort during medieval times. I'm now at the very top of Paleocastro, of the fort, of the castle. The far distance, the town of Kastellorizo, built on that small peninsula that you see. This hill belongs to Kastellorizo, and behind it, the coast of Turkey. And once again, that's the defiant, remote Greek island of Rho. If you're not really sure what this island means to the Greeks, check it out. R-H-O or R-O, or if you use the Greek letters, Rho and Omega. And trust me, you'll be amazed what you will find out about that island. So up here, right at this point, there were 3 anti-aircraft guns that the Italians had placed in the 1940s. Then those guns were replaced by guns from the British. Now, I did say to you, I will tell you why you need to be careful walking around here. First of all, you need to keep your head down to make sure you don't fall. When I videotape, I always look down to the ground. Sometimes the camera shakes, but that's the only negative aspect. The second, regarding this fort, if you come, you need to be very careful because of the snakes, and they are everywhere. These are large black snakes, over 1 meter in length, and they are vipers. Now, they're very afraid of humans. So when they hear you, they run and they hide. The problem is, sometimes you step in the bushes, you don't see them, and then you step on them, and then they may bite. So be careful, keep looking ahead of you, and if you see something long and black, clap your hands, and it will go away. And in the foreground, you see the church of Saint Stephen, Agios Stephanos. And on this side of the castle, of the fort, we find cisterns, places where water would be stored. You see one right there in the middle of the frame. But if we turn around, we can see a much better example of one. This one is about 2 meters in depth. Right here, and above it there's another one. So water would be collected from the rain. It would go into the first cistern right there for storage, and the overflow would be stored down here on the secondary cistern. And there were at least 5 different systems like this one on this side of the fort. Well, this water collection that was devised here, I find it rather fascinating. Let me show you how they used to collect the water. Here's the Church of Virgin Mary. Here's the mosaic that we saw. That's the Church of St. Nicholas in the southwestern corner. And here, there used to be a flat platform of about 12 meters in length, 12 by 5, I would say. And this was completely flat here, paved with stones, but underneath there's a very large cistern, a place where water will be collected. How do they collect the water? Well, this answer lies here behind this small bush of thyme. Check it out. See the opening right there? Right there. Water will flow into this opening or other openings here on the flat surface. It will be collected underneath in a large tank. Then if you want to water it, you could get it from the well over here. And incredibly enough, after 3,000 years, one of the cisterns or the water tanks survives here in the corner right there, and it still has water in it. Let's be careful here because of the snakes. Right there, the water is in there, you see it? So this whole area under my feet was a water cistern or a huge water tank with an ingenious way of collecting water whenever it rained. The water will go through the openings like this one that we just saw here, and then through the well or through the water tank in the corner. We could use it later on. What a place. What a historic place. Really. And I love it when I explore historic places on my own. Okay, my friends, it is now time to say goodbye to Paleokastro, to the ancient fort or castle of Kastellorizo, of the Greek island of Kastellorizo here in the southeastern corner of the Aegean Sea. In case you're very curious about Kastellorizo, it is a very small island of around 9 square kilometers in size. And it lies southeast from the island of Rhodes, which is 135 kilometers away from here. That makes Kastellorizo the most remote island and location in Greece. Out of the hundreds of thousands of tourists that visit Kastellorizo every year, less than 1% make it up to Paleokastro. Kastellorizo has been a Greek island for well over 3,000 years, as this fort or castle proves. This is Vic. Thank you for joining me. And don't forget to subscribe. Bye-bye. And we have left the island of Kastellorizo. We have departed this beautiful Greek island. And here's a view of the magnificent waterfront and the beautiful natural harbor here in Kastellorizo. Let's view the full departure of the Hellenic seaways. Nissos Chios ferry boat. We have a beautiful view of the surrounding hills of the main town of Kastellorizo. As the ferry boat is turning inside the harbor. In the far distance, in the middle of the frame, the church, the Greek Orthodox Church of St. George, Aios Georgios. And the second hill you see in the very far distance is Paleokastro, the ancient fort or castle of Kastellorizo. This is the northern part of the waterfront with beautiful mansions rebuilt since the 1950s. Very, very windy up here. You can see our departure now. And now we're going to get a beautiful view as the ferry boat exits the natural harbor of Kastellorizo. One of the most beautiful waterfronts of the Greek islands. Look at this beautiful sight here as we exit the harbor of Kastellorizo. And now we get a full view of the harbor. Here's the Megisti Hotel, built in the late 60s. The very first hotel in Kastellorizo. And we can see a tour boat from Turkey, from Kos, entering the harbor right there. Another boat, tour boat, is entering the harbor, and on the left, right there, we can see the famous mosque right in the beginning of the harbor, which is now a museum of history. And now we get a full view of the harbor, and on the very left, right up there on top of the hill, we're gonna see it better in a few seconds, the castle or the fort of Kastellorizo, built by the knights in the 1350s. Right there you can see with a huge Greek flag on top of it. Here's a full view of Kastellorizo, and we have left.